Hello, everybody. How are you out there? Thanks for joining me. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I am checks notes Lee Camp. I've just recently set it back up again. You can text the word to join my free start. Let me just start over. That was 4 separate sentences all crammed into one. You can join my free email list by texting the word unredacted to 33777, and that would be the easiest way to find out when the first episode of Unredacted Tonight comes out. It will likely be a week from Thursday is my goal. But yeah, join that email list. If you're in the US, text the word unredacted to 33777. It's super easy and free. If you're outside the US, you can also sign up at leecamp.com. All right, let's get into it. The fact that this is the first Israeli minister who was in the position during October 7th, who is now admitting that the Hannibal Directive happened. And this is something that the Western media continues to ignore, deny, refuse to believe, even though some of us, this guy, have been reporting on this since like weeks after October 7th. Well over a year ago, that Israel killed, murdered many of their own citizens on October 7th. Even in today's articles from CNN and all the rest, BBC, doesn't matter, all Western media, any time they discuss Israel or Gaza or anything, they will put in a couple of sentences that says Hamas killed 1,200 people on October 7th. We all know that is factually false. Many of those people were killed by Israel. And here is yet more evidence coming directly from the Department of Defense, the head of their department, Israel's version of the Department of Defense, a war criminal, Yoav Gallant. He has been forced to step down from that position, or he has resigned. But during October 7th and for many months afterwards, he was the head of their defense department. The ICC has an arrest warrant out for him. And he has now admitted that October 7th saw the use of the Hannibal Directive. You could not get it from a higher source in Israel in charge of the military on October 7th. This is the guy. This is the war criminal. You know him from such great war crimes as. But here it is from Electronic Intifada. The army was ordered to kill Israelis on October 7th. Defense minister confirms. Israeli troops were ordered to shoot and kill captive Israeli civilians on October 7th, 2023. And of course, when you're talking about shooting from helicopters and jets, etc., if you're killing the captives, you're killing everyone. You're killing the captives. You're killing people nearby. You're killing people that look like they might be captives. It's everyone. The order to carry out Israel's so-called Hannibal Directive was issued, quote, tactically, and, quote, in various places, unquote, next to Gaza, which there's no way to tactically kill everyone. Like, you can't, if the order is kill everyone you see so that no hostages end up in Gaza, there's no way to really do that tactically. It's kind of painting with a broad brush. So I think these statements are, that part of the statement is bullshit on its face. But this is it. This is the admission of the highest minister in the guy who oversees the military, says Hannibal Directive happened October 7th. He says, in other places it was not given, and that is a problem. So he's sad they didn't commit these war crimes more than they did. Journalist Amit Segal clarified for viewers that the Hannibal Directive says to shoot to kill when there is a vehicle containing an Israeli hostage. Of course, how can you be certain that there's an Israeli hostage in there? How can you be certain how many Israeli hostages, et cetera, et cetera? A characterization that Gallant did not contest. So he's agreeing that that's what the Hannibal Directive says. Gallant was speaking in his first interview with Israeli television since being fired in November. Contrary to Gallant's statement that the Hannibal Directive was unevenly applied in different areas, Israeli newspaper Yediot Aronot reported in January 2024 that at midday of October 7th, an unambiguous order was given from the high command of the Israeli military to invoke the Hannibal Directive across the entire region. The order came, quote, even if this means the endangerment or harming of the lives of civilians in the region, including the captives themselves, Israeli journalists have reported. Gallant's news statement is highly significant, as is the first public admission by a contemporary Israeli minister that their troops were ordered to fire on their own people October 7th. The Hannibal Directive is Israel's national murder-suicide pact. And there's so much other evidence that proved that the Hannibal Directive was used. Again, many independent voices have been covering this since weeks after October 7th, and it has essentially never been admitted by Western media. I mean, the only even references that I've seen to Hannibal Directive, I'm not saying there's not one Reuters article somewhere out there, but the only real references I've seen to the Hannibal Directive was where, Galloway or someone or low-key pressured Piers Morgan on responding, and Piers Morgan goes, I haven't heard of that. What is that? And this is like, this past summer. So after independent media has been covering it for 8 months, it's basically been completely ignored by Western media. Israeli media has actually covered it more. I'm not saying they've covered it enough, but they've covered it more than Western media. There have been admissions in Haaretz. There have been admissions in some other articles and outlets that the Hannibal Directive was used. Roughly 1,100 Israelis were killed. Sometimes they give the number 1,200. It's squishy. It goes back and forth, but many of those were IDF. It's still unclear exactly how many of those were killed by Israelis and how many were killed by Palestinians. 1 year on, an investigation by the Electronic Intifada found that at least hundreds were killed by Israel. Something else that I have pointed out many times is if you look at the, fairly hidden footage of the cars from the Novo Music Festival, there are hundreds of cars that have been shot up completely, and Israel said they shredded the cars and buried them in an undisclosed location, which sounds to me like, let's cover this up. Here's something else that I apparently missed this from last month, this report. This is crazy. Official figures published for the first time last month revealed that the Israeli Air Force fired 11,000 bullets, dropped more than 500 one-ton bombs, and launched 180 missiles during the fighting on October 7th. Does that add up to not killing your own people? Does that sound like it's about right for not shooting your own civilians? It's absolutely an unbelievable amount of destruction that the Israeli Air Force was involved in. 1,100 shells, meaning bullets, 500 heavy one-ton bombs, 180 missiles, and that was all during October 7th. It's fucking believable. So, to me, there's no more, there's nothing more you could need to know about whether the Hannibal Directive was used. And whenever they give that number, 1,200 killed on October 7th, you have to go, how many killed by Israel? How many killed by Hamas? That should be the following sentence. We don't know, but we know that Israel killed hundreds. So it's just amazing that our Western media is so pathetic, so spineless, so just sad cowards, such a bunch of sad cowards that they cannot report this. And they keep saying the sentence, Hamas killed 1,200 on October 7th. They must know it's false by now. There's no way they could be that ill-informed on what's going on and what's been reported even in Israeli media. So on this same topic, those follow the thread here of those people who have been doing the best reporting on this topic and similar topics about Israel's war crimes, Israel's death and destruction. Some of the best journalists are those at Electronic Intifada, an outlet I just quoted from. One of those, Ali Abu Nima, was arrested in Switzerland for going there to speak. So you have a journalist, American journalist, arrested in Switzerland. He was ultimately, they took his devices, I believe. He was ultimately released and basically deported. He was not allowed to speak at the event he was supposed to speak at. He's deported back to the United States. So luckily he didn't spend too much time in a prison cell. Then you have another journalist at Electronic Intifada. I forget his last name, first name Asa, but anyway, another reporter at Electronic Intifada also arrested for his reporting I believe he was arrested in Britain. And then you have someone who has also been one of the best reporters on this topic, independent reporters, Richard Medhurst, who I've had on this show many times. And he was arrested in Britain and held for 24 hours. I covered it when it happened. Held for 24 hours, all of his devices stolen. And they apparently are still going after him for in Britain for, they say, terrorism charges because he is reporting of Israel's crimes in Gaza, Israel's genocide in Gaza. And another country has just arrested Richard Medhurst, as if that wasn't enough. And I'm going to play about 2 minutes of his recent video on this, his arrest in Austria. So here is that video.
On Monday, agents from the Austrian...
Oh, could you guys hear that? I couldn't hear.
Journalists from the UK. On Monday, agents from the Austrian police and intelligence services detained me, raided my home, raided my studio, and then interrogated me. They essentially lured me into a trap. So I received a letter from the government last week from immigration, summoning me for some interview at my residency. I found that a bit odd because I've lived here for a while. I never had any problems. So having nothing to fear, I went to the meeting by myself. And then after a few simple questions, they suddenly issued a thinly veiled threat saying they were considering revoking my residency because of my alleged reporting on Palestine and Lebanon. So of course, my answer was no comment. And as soon as I thought everything was over, I was ambushed by a group of plainclothes agents. They entered the room, flashing their badges in my face, and they said that they were the Austrian equivalent of MI5 or the FBI. They detained me, and then they served me with a warrant from the state prosecutor to search my home, search my studio, take all of my devices. Why? Because they think that I, a Christian Englishman, am a member of Hamas. Yes, you heard that correctly. They are accusing me of being a member of Hamas, of being part of the Izz al-Din Qassam brigades, of disseminating propaganda, encouraging terrorism, being affiliated with organized crime and a terrorist group. I mean, it's like reading something out of the Twilight Zone. So they seized my phone, and they drove me to my residence, ransacked the place. They even took devices which I repeatedly told them do not belong to me. Then they drove me to my studio and turned the place upside down. So I had to watch my devices being disassembled before my very eyes by a group of strangers. All these tools that I spent years building and investing in, the core of my journalistic profession. They took, in total, they took like 5-6 different laptops and computers, phones, USB sticks, hard drives, DVDs, you name it.
Sorry, I was muted there. Now his other home in Austria has been raided, and he's had his devices stolen, as he was mentioning, and they're trying to make his journalism impossible. As he mentioned, and he mentioned it with his devices he had in Britain as well, that they've basically stolen them all, stuff and video recording devices, etc., as well as laptops that he spent, all of his money purchasing. So this effort is twofold. It's one, to try and stop specifically his reporting. Can we lock up Richard Medhurst? And if we can't lock him in a prison cell, if we don't have enough evidence to prove that he's doing anything other than journalism, maybe we can at least slow him down by taking so many of his devices used for his reporting that he can no longer report because he doesn't have the money to rebuy the stuff. But it also, beyond just that, it creates a chilling effect. This is designed to cause a chilling effect on anybody who is reporting accurately on Israel's war crimes, Israel's genocide. And, I would not at all fault Richard Medhurst for self-censoring. I don't know that he says he has, but I think he has mentioned in his last video that he doesn't know what he's allowed to say and what he's not allowed to say in Britain. So, yeah, it's designed to stop this kind of reporting. And it shows that we are reporting the truth, that Richard Medhurst is, that Electronic Intifada is, that Ali Abunimah is. Several journalists for the Gray Zone have been arrested. One in Israel and one in was held for 5 hours and has his devices stolen. Kit Clarenberg in Britain. So these are the outlets you should be going to, because clearly these are the ones that the ruling elite that are committing a genocide right now in Gaza don't want you to be reading, and it should add all the more reason to go to them. Luckily, I am not one of the ones who's been arrested, but I've just had everything censored and suppressed that you can imagine. The latest is I got an email from a CNN writer who wants to do an interview. We're interested in doing an interview with you. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that ploy many times before. It means they're getting ready to do a hit piece on me. They want to make it, so that when people Google my name, that's all kind of garbage about me. And, the New York Times did this several years ago against me. Maybe they decided that one's too long ago, so it's time to re-up the garbage against me. Maybe it's because I'm launching a new show, Unredacted Tonight. I don't know. But they certainly want to use every tactic at their disposal to stop us from getting the truth out there about what is happening in Gaza, what is being committed by Israel and the United States. Please do not forget this is a U.S.-backed genocide, not just an Israeli genocide. But someone asked if there's a way to help Richard. He is asking for donations over on his Twitter account, or it gives you the link on the Twitter account. The Twitter account name is Richie Medhurst, RICHIMEDHURST. So if you want to donate to his campaign to get enough money to buy more devices for him, that is the way to do that. But while we're on the topic, let's talk about how Trump and his family are planning, apparently, to enrich themselves even more, as if they need more money, by stealing Gaza. So it's not just that Trump loves committing genocide for the U.S. I mean, that is his job. That's why he's there. It's not just that it's his job. It's his passion too. Isn't it great to see someone, especially later in life, find their passion? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing there. Really is. Because a lot of people they get into the late 70s, early 80s, and they're like, I've done it all. I'm going to take a break. Not Trump. I feel like he's newly awakened to how much joy he finds in committing genocide. So that's really, again, a beautiful thing. But here's a great breakdown by Ben Norton. Actually, before I get to that real quick, and I know I'm going to be doing this a little more than usual, asking you to help the show, sometimes in free ways that do not cost any money. I don't mean run out on the freeway. I mean ways that do not cost money. Because I do have the new show coming out, hopefully in a week and a half, Unredacted Tonight. It's going to be my new version of Redacted Tonight. If you liked Redacted Tonight, I really hope that you will love and support Unredacted Tonight. The way to find out when that episode's out, make sure you don't miss it, all that good stuff, is to join my email list, which is, I've just created an easier way to sign up, because sometimes it is hard to do the pop-up over at leecamp.com. If you're in the United States, just text the word Unredacted, UNREDACTED. Text the word Unredacted to 33777. And you can sign up in the United States for the free email list that way. Again, this is a way to support the show that costs you nothing. No money thrown in. Text the word Unredacted 33777. Another way to sign up if you're outside the United States is to go to leecamp.com. You should see a pop-up window there. Okay. Back, where was I? Donald Trump plans to take over Gaza, expel Palestinians, and build real estate his family very well could profit from. And Ben Norton connects the dots on this. He says, since returning for his second term as U.S. president, Trump has been as pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian as he could possibly be, as we all knew would happen. Anyone who voted for Trump thinking it was good for Palestinians or voted for Biden thinking it was good for Palestinians, you are a dum-dum. Trump signed an executive order calling to deport international students who protest Israel's crimes against Palestinian people. He also imposed sanctions on the ICC. I just read about one of those. Well, no, I mentioned it, but I'm actually in a minute going to get to more of the sanctions on the ICC. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, he said, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it, he said. The Trump family, and I covered this in a past show last week, so if you want more on that, feel free to go back and watch that show. But what I didn't cover is the Trump family could profit from the colonization of the Palestinian land. The U.S. president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is married to Trump's daughter, has significant real estate investments in Israeli firms that profit from the expansion of illegal settlements in occupied Palestinian territory. He's getting a little of that gravy, getting a little of that nice milking that. Can you milk gravy? Milking that nice gravy out of genocide. Trump and Kushner have both publicly proposed ethnically cleansing Palestinians, expelling them from Gaza, and building luxury real estate on the Mediterranean Sea. Trump stated, this is with Netanyahu sitting next to him. He said, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Palestinians just can't go back. So he has said the Palestinians will not be going back, which, as I covered in the last show, is the definition of ethnic cleansing. That's what that is, to clear people out, ethnic cleansing. Kushner, in an interview at Harvard University, was salivating. He said Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable too if people would focus on kind of building up, livelihoods, Kushner said. Mere months after the Trump administration left office in 2021, Kushner founded a Florida-based investment company called Affinity Partners. Saudi Arabia promptly announced that its sovereign wealth fund would invest $2 billion in Kushner's firm. Okay, so immediately after Trump leaves, founds this firm in Florida. Saudi Arabia invests $2 billion in it. The Saudi monarchy told Kushner that its money should specifically be invested in Israeli companies. So this was not like behind Saudi Arabia's back. He was investing in Israeli companies. No, Saudi Arabia wanted that. A few days before Trump returned to office in January 2025, Israeli regulators approved a deal in which Kushner's Saudi-backed fund, Affinity Partners, would double its stake in Phoenix Financial, an Israeli company that has profited from illegal settlements in occupied Palestinian territory. It is not only the Trump family, but also the Saudi monarchy that may profit from the expansion of illegal Israeli settlements and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. So it's not a lot of dots you got to connect here to show that Trump and Kushner stand to actually profit from this ethnic cleansing. Not just do it for the U.S. empire, not just do it because Israel owns our Congress and our government. None of those reasons. Also, they're doing, those reasons as well, but also because they stand to make a lot of money by ethnically cleansing that area, building it up, and selling it off. Furthermore, there is, more than enough evidence that Israel and its investors, such as Saudi Arabia and the U.S., want a pipeline that cuts through Gaza. Furthermore, there's been oil and gas found out in the ocean there off Gaza. A lot of oil and gas that they would like to exploit. And by the way, you might think that what I'm about to tell you is a Onion headline. This is literally serious. Netanyahu gifted Trump a golden pager when he saw him. Why a pager? Some of you may know. Because Israel used pagers to commit a terror attack in Lebanon, where they blew up something like 3,000 pagers, killed 12 people, I think, seriously injured, hundreds more. So he gave Trump a golden pager. It says on the plaque to President Trump, our greatest friend and greatest ally. And literally a golden pager mounted on a slice of olive tree. And this also speaks to Israel's death and destruction and their ethnic cleansing and genocide. When you destroy an area and you want to destroy a people, often what is done is you also destroy their means of feeding themselves, their means of survival. Olive trees are incredibly important to many Israelis, but also to many Palestinians. And so it's basically like, look, we have chopped down the olive trees. We've chopped down the thing that has meaning. And olive trees grow for hundreds of years. So you're chopping something that's pretty irreplaceable. And, Israelis have, as they continue to commit their horrible attacks on Palestinians, have been shown to do things like in the dead of night, go into olive tree farms and burn a hole in the middle of the tree and fill it with cement, which is apparently how you can kill them, stop them from regrowing. It's that kind of absolute awful, horrible shit that is done by these so-called settlers. Settlers. That's a nice euphemism for land thieves and pillagers. While meeting with Trump at the White House on February 4th, Netanyahu gifted the U.S. president a golden pager, a symbol of a terrorist attack that Israel carried out in Lebanon in September. A dozen Lebanese civilians were killed in the attack, including children. Even former CIA director and U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta admitted it was a form of terrorism. I played that clip for you when he said it. Former head of the CIA, former head of the Defense Department, Leon Panetta, said it was a terrorist attack. Trump praised the Israeli terror attack as a great operation. They also severely injured a lot of doctors and nurses who are also the type of people that have pagers. So, lovely. And it's, again, dictionary definition of ethnic cleansing, dictionary definition of genocide, dictionary definition of terrorism, all of those things. So, real quick, also, here are the sanctions. Trump is going after the ICC, the International Criminal Court. And keep in mind all of the grounds that Trump is now walking on, these paths that were set forward for him were set forward under the Biden administration. This genocide was well over a year old under the Biden administration. Going after the ICC, insulting them, saying they're not legit, all done by the Biden administration. Then Trump gets to office and he just says, well, how can I take it one step further? Well, I'll put sanctions on the International Criminal Court. And he has put sanctions on the chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, is the first target of the sanctions. The ICC chief prosecutor, first person from the War Crimes Tribunal to be hit by U.S. sanctions imposed by Trump. Reuters has reported Khan was named on Friday in an annex to an executive order signed by Trump a day earlier, imposing economic and travel sanctions on the ICC staff and their families. Trump imposed the sanctions on the court in response to arrest warrants it issued for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. We just had a nice chat about him, didn't we? Both are accused by Khan and the court of committing war crimes against Palestinians in Gaza, including using starvation as a weapon of war. Reuters notes that Trump's sanctions include freezing U.S. assets of those designated and prohibiting them and their families from visiting the U.S. The order directed the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, to submit the names of those individuals to be sanctioned within 60 days. And, this is a key thing you have to do. If you're going to be, if you're going to, listen, folks, if you're going to get involved in the fun game of violating all international laws, international norms, committing war crimes, committing genocide, you're going to get involved in that. You also got to just knock the knees out from under any international groups, courts, organizations that might raise their hand and go, we think you're a war criminal. So you got to do whatever you can to stop them as well. You can't, you got to nip that stuff in the bud. So part of it is to defund them if you're involved in the funding. Part of it's to sanction them. Part of them's to say, oh no, ICC doesn't count when it's us, when we're the ones committing the crimes. When it's Russia, sure, we love the ICC. When it's Syria, all about it. But when it's us, it just doesn't ring the same way, does it? Thank you, 11th Hour, for supporting the show. Much love and solidarity. Appreciate it. The donation for $5 to help support the show. Really appreciate that. If you want to become a regular supporter of this show, everybody, please join up at leecamp.net. That's my locals page. It's a whopping $6 a month. You get all kinds of great perks and stuff. So I hope you'll do that. Join on up over at leecamp.net. And as I mentioned, join the free email list. Text the word unredacted to 33777. And then when you get an email from me, once you've signed up, I hope you will, add me to your contacts list or whatever other steps you have to take to make sure it doesn't get sent to spam, because they've done everything they can to make sure my stuff gets sent to spam. But yeah, text the word unredacted, UNREDACTED, to 33777. Okay. Let's keep going here. Hope everybody's doing well out there. I want to get to, in just a second, I want to get to China, but got a couple more. These are some just enjoyable videos. This is during the Super Bowl halftime show. Apparently, someone was smart enough to be one of the dancers out on the field, pulled out a Palestinian flag that says Sudan and Gaza on it. And so this person was a dancer actually on the field, assuming this is not AI created. Doesn't look like it was, but and yeah, for those of you listening to the podcast, there's a dancer that pulls out the Palestinian flag. And of course, you wouldn't have, if you were watching the Super Bowl at home, you would not have seen this, because this was because the cameras were not going to stay on this guy. So this is footage from a cell phone taken in the stadium, showing that a Palestinian flag was whipped out, which pretty cool. Nice job getting out on the field during the Super Bowl. And you just heard me mention the podcast. If you prefer podcasts, this is called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify. It's called Moment of Clarity on any other platform. Please look it up. But so here is someone asking Peter Thiel, billionaire Peter Thiel. He's also part of what I did a bit of a more deep dive on him a few weeks ago. Total sociopath billionaire, as the usual. But he's part of the PayPal mafia. He and Elon Musk were the early kind of founders of PayPal. Elon Musk was not. He came in after the first year or something. But anyway, they got their first billions from PayPal. And he's asked by someone in the crowd, because he's doing like Q&A. He now, sorry, I should give a little more information. He now created and runs a weapons contractor group company called Palantir, which is all about surveillance, AI programming, dystopian data mining, all of it. And he works with Israel. Some of his, I think, biggest contracts are with Israel and with the U.S. Defense Department. The U.S. War Department. And so like the AI that's being used to murder civilians in Gaza, at least some of it is Palantir connected, Palantir created. And one of the worst ones is lavender. I've always had a hatred of lavender, and now I know why. They're killing children in Gaza. So anyway, but watch how squirrely he gets when he's asked about his software and his company being used to kill children in Gaza.
So what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence or lavender by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets?
Look, I'm not, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel.
I'll keep playing it, but just how many stutters does it take to answer your company, your software, AI is being used? And let me just say, I don't know whether there's a direct connection between his AI and Lavender, but he's asked about he is a weapons contractor. His AI is being used to murder people, and he cannot. He just completely stutters all over the place when he's asked to try and address this.
I'm not, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything.
It's not for us to ask any questions about a genocide. Do not ask any questions about a genocide. Really? I think it's specifically for us as humans to ask fucking questions about a genocide. That is what we should be doing. If we've got a moral, the cell in our body, we should be asking questions. Why? Why is this being done? Why is it being allowed? Who is doing it? What is their goal? Why is the U.S. supporting it? Why is the U.S. sending bombs to this genocide? What makes people think this is fine, this is okay, to murder children, to murder innocent people every day, to starve innocent people? It's not our place? Are you kidding me? Such a morally bankrupt sack of shit. And he both admits that we shouldn't ask any questions, which is insane. But he also admits that his deference is to Israel. A bias to just assume Israel is always. Why would you have that? What? Why would you have that bias? I just always assume Israel's right, and I don't. He says I'm not up on the information in Israel because I don't ask any questions. This is one of the worst answers I've ever heard on this. Like, at least lie. At least say Israel's. At least pull a Sam Harris or a Ben Shapiro and say Israel does nothing wrong. They're the bestest. At least pull that. Jesus.
It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right, and that's sort of the perspective I come back to.
Broadly, the IDF gets to decide what they do, and they're always in the right. And I forgot to mention, this guy plays a pretty powerful role in the Trump administration. Not as powerful as Elon Musk, but he completely funded and created J.D. Vance. He is the founder and CEO of Palantir, which is a massive weapons contractor with a massive Pentagon contractor. He heavily donated to Trump's campaign. He has the ear of the president as closely as just about anyone does, with the exception of Elon Musk, who is in Trump's pants. And these are the people that are deciding what the U.S. does going forward. Absolute sociopaths. Okay, let's get to. This is a kind of a connecting the dots of Trump's war on China. Hopefully it continues being an economic war and it doesn't become a hot war. But with us arming Taiwan and everything, we're certainly trying to push it in that direction. But there's this thread which pulls together a lot of this. about how it's from New Rules Geopolitics. And it says Trump's trade war against China is doomed to fail. And here are some reasons. Now, I'm going to go over what they cover here, but also add in here that this perfectly fits with some of the decisions that we've seen Trump make that seem kind of crazy, like the Panama Canal and Greenland. Why is that like day one? We're going to steal Greenland and the Panama Canal. It seems a little odd to pick those things. We know Trump is an imperialist. We know Trump thinks the United States should just be able to steal everything. But why pick those? And this actually directly speaks to why he would pick those as the things. Reason number one, they say, China has alternative markets to the U.S. and the collective West. China's exports to the global South, which includes Latin America, has surged since 2020 and is now much greater than its exports to the United States. And there's a chart here for those of you who listen to the podcast that shows China's exports to the global South have now gotten way ahead of China's exports to U.S., Europe, Japan, and Australia, and about almost 3 times as much of China's exports just to the U.S. So global South is now far more important in China's economy than exports to the United States. Well, so if you're Trump, if you are a sociopathic leader of the U.S. empire, one of the first steps you would take is, well, we got to stop China from being able to be as connected to the global South. Let's make it as difficult as possible for them to continue running business as usual without, and how do we do that without bombing them? Well, one way is to cut off their shipping paths. So that explains the Panama Canal. That explains why Trump wants the Panama Canal back, which Panama has said absolutely not. But they did get some concessions, like the U.S. doesn't have to pay to use the Panama Canal anymore or something like that. But I bet you Trump does not stop on this effort to try and steal the Panama Canal because he realizes that he can then shut it off for China. And if China loses the Panama Canal, it's a big problem for all of this shipping to the global South. But also, China just built a massive port in Peru to make that easier for their global shipping. But here's reason number 2. The U.S. is heavily dependent on Chinese rare earth metals. I've mentioned this before, but the U.S. needs them for everything from consumer electronics to advanced weapons system. China accounts for 2/3 of global rare earth production, so there are not many alternatives. This is a chart showing U.S. rare earth suppliers. 80% comes from China, 3% from Japan, 3% from France, 6% Estonia, and 8% others. So the U.S., in order to shift away from China, has to find rare earth minerals. Well, where are they going to go? Well, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to steal the resources in Ukraine. They'll find that very useful to steal minerals there. But another is to find other areas, including Greenland. Now, I don't know specifically which rare earth minerals are, in Greenland and which ones aren't, but they do know that as global warming continues and more and more of Greenland becomes easier to access for miners, and I mean both people digging in the earth and children, that they'll be able to get at least some of those rare earth minerals from Greenland if they were to steal Greenland, if they were to use their imperial powers to wrest Greenland from Denmark. And this perfectly fits with Trump trying to find ways to disconnect, to decouple from China. The U.S. reason number 3, the U.S. depends on China for essential medicines. Now, I don't know what the U.S. is going to do about that one. Next, Trump is going to say he wants to steal Cuba because Cuba has some of the best doctors in the world. That'll be the next step. We're We're going to mine Cuba for doctors. If you thought healthcare in the U.S. is bad now, imagine what will happen if the current pharmaceutical supply chains break down. Reason number 4, U.S. can't stop China's technological rise. China dominates the U.S. in 57 of 64 critical technologies, according to an Australian Strategic Policy Institute study, which is funny that even the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, the ASPI, was willing to admit that, since the ASPI is like a rabid anti-China, partially funded by the U.S. Think tank. But of course, some of the time they have to tell the truth because they need the truth in order to decide how they're going to commit this Cold War against China. And so apparently they put together charts showing critical technologies and whether China's winning. And China is ahead in 57 of 64 of these critical technologies. Reason number 5, many American companies will go bankrupt without access to the Chinese market. And that includes, I don't know that Apple would go bankrupt, but a large percentage of Apple's profits come from China. Reason number 6, the Chinese economy is far more productive than the American economy. This is why the trade deficit is so high. This is also why the Chinese middle class has been growing, or one of the reasons. Reason number 7, China's economic model is superior to America's. That's what they're saying, and it seems to be true in many ways. Chinese companies reinvest their profits into expanding production and R&D. Also, it seems that a lot of the technology and the information is more easily shared in China, whereas in the U.S., it's all about locking down your technology, locking down your information, making sure no one's sharing it, no one's benefiting outside of a very specific tiny group inside a corporation. So these are the reasons that they've come up with for why China is going to win this this economics war with the United States, this Cold War with the United States. And it fits with what Trump is attempting to do. He's attempting to, and of course he's not going to publicly claim those are the reasons. He's not going to say, hey, China's beating us, so we want to try and stop China from shipping around the world, so we're going to steal the Panama Canal. Instead, he just says, Panama Canal, it's ours. We deserve it. We should get that. That's what he says. Okay, I'm going to get to kind of a good news story here. Hey, everybody, don't forget to support the show, leecamp.net. Also, text the word unredacted to 33777 if you're in the U.S. That will sign you up to my free email list. There is no cost to the email list. Apparently, here's the kind of good news story. Apparently, the federal workers' unions have seen a massive surge because of Trump running roughshod over the federal government, and the Elon Musk's Doge is firing people, or trying to fire hundreds of thousands, millions of workers. And you guys know that Trump has sent out a letter asking everyone to resign and getting a benefits package if they do. And their hope, the Trump government's hope, is that 20% of all workers will take it, which would be, I think, at least hundreds of thousands, maybe more. In their aggressive bid to upend federal government, Elon Musk and his lieutenants have perhaps unintentionally driven thousands of federal workers into the arms of one of the biggest enemies of their sweeping project, organized labor. And this also shows, sorry, I'll get to more of the details, but this also shows that organized labor unions are a defense mechanism against the ruling elite, against the richest of the rich, against the power-hungry greed freaks. And there's been so much effort by both our media and both parties. I mean, the Democrats don't stand for unions. What, every once in a while, Bernie Sanders says 3 sentences about workers? That's not really supporting unions. So, but that's that historically, that's what they do. This doesn't mean every union does it right. It doesn't mean that a lot of union leadership sometimes is captured in order to facilitate the wishes of the ruling elite. But generally, unions are a defense against these fucking greed pirates. So it's like, if you want to have a defense of your job, a defense against them, this is one of the most effective ones, is a strong, organized labor campaign, a strong union. Unions that represent federal government workers are reporting significant increases in signups since President Trump took office and empowered Musk's Department of Government Efficiency to drastically slash the federal workforce. By the way, the Musk or Mosk is the Swedish word for worm, so I might just call him Worm because I feel like it's easier to pronounce than Musk's. It's too hard. I'm just gonna call him Worm. The American Federation of Government Employees, the largest union representing federal workers, added 5,575 new members in 6 days. To have a campaign where you gain that many workers to a union would normally take like a year and millions of dollars or something. By comparison, the union gained 14, so almost 15,000 new members during all of 2024. So they've already got in what was it, 4 days? 6 days. In 6 days, they've gotten more than 1/3 of the number of members they got last year. Currently, the AFGE has 319,000 active members, a record exceeding its previous high water mark in 2018 during the first Trump administration. Membership is going through the roof. And folks, this doesn't need to just be the federal government. I think we're overdue for workers to exert their power across this entire goddamn country. We need strikes of all kinds. We need general strikes. We need strikes in every different company and corporation. Absolutely, workers need to take back some of their power. And of course, I always like to get the core of reality. I know most or maybe all the other independent media shows you watch don't really want to get down there. But to go a little deeper in the reality, wage slavery is fucked. So the idea that you should have to work, the idea that we should be in this feudal system where you have to work, you have to give away your life force for most of your active years in order to feed your family is nonsense. It's nonsense. But anyway, massive move towards unions. And again, I hope that this goes outside just the federal government and goes to many companies, many organizations. It'd be great if Elon Musk's companies got unionized. I know sometimes they tried, and he has fired people for just saying the word union out loud because that's what they do. That's what these untethered, megalomaniacal human garbage refuse bins do with their time. That's what they do. Thank you, Helen. Helen has a good point in the chat. Helen says Wall Street has to have an adversarial position against everyone because they are against everyone. They are. There's a book, I haven't read much of it, but called Capital Hates You. And it's true. The people that are actually in charge of the capital in capitalism, they hate all of us. They hate all of us. So their job is to a combination of suppress us and divide us. And that's what they do endlessly. It's done a pretty good job of dividing us, considering half the country hates the other half. And a very tiny fraction of the country, well, no, that's not true, actually. Independents right now are a very large group in this country. But so a certain fraction of the country understands that the two parties are one party. But there's a lot of people that do not, still to this day. Okay, let's talk a little more about the corruption going on in the Trump government. Biden had plenty of his own corruption. Let's remember he protected his son on the Burisma, the Ukrainian oil board, energy board, by firing the federal prosecutor or whatever. I don't know if it's called federal, but the government prosecutor in Ukraine. So, one little taste of the corruption from the Biden administration. But here's some interesting corruption coming out of Elon Musk and X. Sorry, I couldn't find a way to look at this without it being in the email like this. But anyway, this is coming from Lever, the David Sirota created journalistic outlet. Late last month, Elon Musk's company X announced a deal with Visa to create a digital wallet and peer-to-peer payment system through the social media platform. Days later, Musk has signaled that he and his Doge team are working to kill the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which polices peer-to-peer payment apps. So literally, he's killing the bureau, the committee that would oversee this new thing he's unveiling. Let's see, Consumer Financial Protection, and he literally tweeted out RIP CFPB, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They had been planning tougher oversight of such systems to make sure they don't steal your money. The Trump administration is now trying to completely shut down the CFPB. The push to better regulate payment apps intensified after thousands of Americans lost their savings in the bankruptcy of a tech company that was backed by the financial firm of CFPB critic Mark Andreessen, a Trump super PAC donor whose firm provided financing for Musk's takeover of Twitter, and an investor in the lending company nailed by the CFPB. And I've often also pointed out the CFPB is largely toothless and has managed to do very little in terms of protecting consumers. So both things can be true, right? They can be largely defanged. They can be largely useless in protecting customers, but also they can be the only thing that was actually overseeing peer-to-peer payment apps. And now Elon Musk has just struck a deal with Visa for a peer-to-peer payment app using X. So all those things can be true. And then days later, he works to crush the one organization that might be overseeing him. Okay, let's see here. Google has lifted its ban on using its AI for weapons and surveillance. This fits with Google's trend of claiming they will not do something horrific, and then eventually being like, "Okay, we'll do it. Fine." Like they had the motto, the logo or whatever motto, "Don't be evil" for many years, and then I think in 2015 they quietly removed it from their like bylaws. They're like, "Okay, we'll be kind of evil." Well, they did have a ban on using AI for weapons and surveillance. And let's see. Oh yeah. In 2018, they put in they barred its AI technology from being used for sensitive purposes. Weeks into President Trump's second term, those guidelines have just been overhauled. They just threw them out the window. You know what? Never mind. We're going to use AI to murder children. Come on. Why not? So Google's getting in on the fun. If anyone thought that these companies that kind of claim to be neoliberal, like, the one of the heads of Alphabet, was his name Eric Schmidt? Is he still the head of Alphabet? He was one of the biggest Hillary Clinton supporters and, huge donor and everything else in Hillary Clinton's campaign. But the various neoliberal groups that for a long time have pretended to be liberal, Google, Facebook, Amazon. It's like, we kind of support both sides, but we don't like Donald Trump. When push comes to shove and Trump's in power, first of all, they're in line to give him a fluff job. So it's not it's not like they're standing up against him. But then on top of that, they see it as like their opening to like, oh, Trump's in power. This is a good time for us to just abandon anything we said about not using AI for murdering people. Okay, I'm going to do an extra segment for my supporters over at Locals. That segment is going to be on more information on the death of the OpenAI whistleblower, the very suspicious death of the OpenAI whistleblower, who a week after being in the New York Times for saying that OpenAI, ChatGPT, was involved in copyright infringement and stealing materials from people, a week after that, found dead in his apartment in San Francisco. And there's new information on that, which I'm going to be bringing just to my Locals members. If you want to be a member over there, you can join up. It's $6. You go over to leecamp.net, which is my Locals page, scroll down to become a supporter, and you will support this show every single day. But also, I wanted to tell everyone that, again, Unredacted Tonight, working very hard to launch this new show, to bring you a new version of Redacted Tonight. It'll be lower budget, but it'll be completely independent. And really, it's up to you guys as to whether I can keep it going, because I am suppressed. I know this YouTube, whether I launch Unredacted Tonight or not, this YouTube's going to be equally suppressed. So I don't expect it to get 1 million views or anything. It's really going to come down to you guys and how you support the show. So I hope you'll do that. One way is to join the free email list. Text the word unredacted to 33777. And for all of you not at Locals, I will see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. You just got to show up. Don't expect them to tell you. 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. See you there. Oh, yes. 11th Hour is asking, will it be on YouTube? Yes. Unredacted Tonight will be free on all my platforms. But again, I know it'll be suppressed. So I hope you guys will let people know about it. Okay, folks at Locals. Hope you're doing well. Let's see.